All right. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to Mentorship Monday. This is session number 7. This is awesome. We've had 7 consecutive weeks now of live mentoring opportunities for you, or maybe you're listening to on the recording. We've been hosting these on our Principal's Office podcast, as well as our YouTube page. So if you miss it here, you can listen there, or if you're part of our paid client communities, we have a special page for you where we host all of the summaries, all of the resources, and all the access to all of our training programs for you. So we are heading into the most important time for school leaders. Decisions are being made right now, strategic decisions are being made, whether we realize it or not, right? Not just by you, by all the people in your organization. So last session we talked about building a culture that people don't want to leave. Today I'm going to talk about something just as important, maybe more important. Who should be staying? Who should be staying? So let me start by asking a question. Who on your team right now is not aligned with your expectations? Who on your team right now is not aligned with your expectations? And you probably don't need to think too long about it. You already know. I could guarantee a couple names came to mind. Now, let me take it one step further. If you had an opening and that person applied for that job and you knew what you know now about the person, would you hire them for the role? Would you hire them for that role? Because this is where leadership gets real. And because most leaders already know the answer, they just don't want to face it. There's loyalty, there's time invested that, oh, they've been here so long, or they're actually really a really good person, or maybe there's no other candidates out there because we got a shortage, or well, they get really good scores, or it's going to take us so long to replace and retrain the next person. Or it's not that bad. You almost begin to defend what you don't want, right? You begin to defend that person. But leadership, it's not about being comfortable. It's about clarity. And I'll be 100% honest. I have made this mistake in every organization I have led. I gave way too many chances to people. I believed that things would turn around under my leadership. I I would defend them myself. Well, they're fine around me, or I can contain their behavior, or I can influence their behavior. I can get them to kind of, toe the line and line up. Sometimes I took blame for their behavior. Well, I haven't told them every time, or maybe I haven't been as clear about that they shouldn't do it that way, or that they or maybe even, man, I haven't been a perfect employee. I've made mistakes. So many times I should have been fired or reprimanded. I mean, let's give them one more shot. Let's give them one more shot. The issue is I gave them one more shot without actually telling them exactly what it is that they did wrong all the time. I mean, I had one teacher, that one job, and if you've been a part of our training sessions, I've told this story before, so I won't harp on it, but we had 4 teachers in one position in one year. I mean, in a half year. And the last one we hired, boy, they were so strong in content, but man, they had so many issues. I was just trying to get to the end of the year, right? I knew I wasn't going to keep her. I was almost afraid to just rip the Band-Aid off. And then when I ended up doing it because I had gotten sick and tired of being sick and tired, I did it so poorly. It was so bad how determination went. So bad. And in that process, I wasn't just hurting the school. I was hurting all the people that were doing it right. And now, my current world, I'm the one who's sitting on the outside looking in at those that I probably should have let go in my first year because I truly believed I could contain it. I could lead it. I could change it. And that's not a weakness. That's maybe egotistical leadership in a way. But here's where I got it so wrong. I never planned to not be leading that organization anymore. Never planned. Never planned for not being there. I always planned to be able to, you know, influence the outcome, shift and mold, create transformation. I never pictured the school with me not being at the helm, which goes against everything that I typically teach, right? Your job as a leader is to build succession. Part of that succession is peeling away what doesn't work for other people. I wasn't hearing the complaints, so I assumed things were getting better. But silence doesn't mean alignment. It just means tolerance. And that tolerance goes away when the leadership is gone. And sometimes it has what Pat Lencioni describes in his book, The Ideal Team Player. I highly recommend. It's a really great read for a leadership team. Anybody who's responsible for hiring and supervising, read The Ideal Team Player. But there's this term that he used called the skillful politician. And maybe you've got that skillful politician on your team like I've had on mine. Maybe you've had it. Maybe you've got it right now, right? You start managing appearances instead of leading alignment. Alignment in the mission, the values, the goals, focused on personal growth, professional growth, development, improvement each week. Not the same mistakes over and over, not the same concerns, not the same frustrations. And I've had to learn something the hard way. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. So here's a shift I've had to make and I have to keep making. Trust your people, but verify and work to gain daily, right? Work daily to gain alignment, right? Verify that work, right? Verify that they are lined up across the board, not just when you're in the room, when they're in any room. So you have to lead not just for today, but for when you're not there. You need those vision carriers and vision casters in every conference room, in every hallway, in every classroom meeting, in every PLC that you're not there because your culture only works if your culture, I'm sorry, if your culture only works when you're present, it's not culture, it's containment. So what does alignment really look like, right? So again, let's pull back to Lencioni's work in The Ideal Team Player. Okay, he at the end of the book, I don't want to spoil it, but he talks about there's three specific traits with the ideal team player: humble, hungry, and smart. Humble, hungry, and smart. And so being humble means you're open to feedback. Team mindset first, right? Doesn't care who gets the credit or who's in the lead, right? They jump in to help, not just for prestige, not just for prestige. Hungry means that they're driven. It takes initiative. They have a growth mindset. They're asking questions. They stretch themselves. They don't just rely on the past. And being smart means being people aware, right? Strong emotional intelligence, communicates well, and not just IQ smart, right? Not IQ smart. Smart, like you don't need to worry about them representing the school anytime with anyone, right? They know what to say, how to say it, and when not to say anything. They truly understand the purpose, the vision, the goals, the values. They lead through those values and the strategy that we're going to get there. Not perfect, not 100%, you know, perfect in everything they do, but aligned. Because alignment just isn't performance. It's mindset, it's behavior, it's impact. So how do you get there, right? So if you're part of our communities, you already have the tool, right? Your behavior-based interview questions and processes. And if you just joined us live, I just dropped a link to the notes if you want to grab them. So you already got the tool. You've got our behavior-based interview questions and processes. If you don't know where it is, in your blueprint for success, program, just, message me and I'll help you. But I'm going to share like a couple of the questions during this session. But I was thinking as I was building this lesson, it's like, you know, it's great to rehire and reorient your team every single year. You should be doing that, right? Last week we talked about stay interviews, and you could build these based interview questions into your stay interview process, right? To make sure that you've got alignment. So let's use them on our current team as much as we use them as our new team. But question number one, this is the question I love, the most. And this could be part of your end of the year kind of just a review with every employee. Tell me about a situation which you failed in your leadership. What did you learn? And how do you lead differently now? And in that response, you're listening for ownership, you're listening for growth, you're listening for the understanding that failure and success are partners. You're looking for authenticity because, the only predictor for future behavior is the past behavior as of now, right? As you build, training programs and platforms around to grow that, right? So tell me about a situation which you failed in your leadership this year. What did you learn? And how do you lead differently now? Or how do you plan on leading, differently next year? Okay. Ownership and growth. So that's one particular question you could build. Okay. And that's a question for new hires or current hires. Okay. Question number two. Question number two. Walk me through, sorry, take me through the most successful education plan you've ever been a part of, right? So maybe that's for a new hire. So take me through the most successful lesson that you had this year, right? Or take me through the most successful case. Take me through a case study. What were some of the key components? What was your role in developing or improving or implementing that, right? So you're looking for contribution, you're looking for ownership. You're looking for reflection. Shift your questions when you're talking to your team, right? Don't ask low level questions that can just get a very easy response. Ask them to bring in and tell you a story. Ask them to bring in true evaluative experiences, and you're going to start to see, how much is this person working with other people? How much are they taking ownership of the learning process of all of their students? How much are they taking into consideration of different learning styles? How much are they taking into consideration this our new disruptive tools like Chat GPT that most schools have an issue with, right? How are they evolving as an educator in your environment? Number three, if this was a new hire, I'd be asking them, tell me about the healthiest school culture you've ever worked in and what was your role in it, right? You could ask them specifically on how the changes were, brought in. If it's a current, employee, ask them, tell me tell me about the healthiest parts of our school culture. What do you find as the healthiest parts. What are you doing to contribute to ensure that our school culture continues to grow into a healthy learning environment, a healthy working environment? Ask them to be specific, right, on changes you've seen in the culture, or what has worked to improve the culture. What have you done to work to improve the culture, right? And here you're listening for their role in the improvement of the culture versus an observer, right? Or even maybe a contributor to the negativity. Okay, just listen. These are good opportunities for you to listen to your people, because individuals who help build culture can explain what healthy culture looks like, feels like, sounds like, and their role in it. Remember, in the book, in my book, The 10 Indicators of High Performing Charter Schools, healthy cultures, you can define it, right? Well, see it, define it, um, train on it, practice it, model it, measure it, celebrate it, right? So all those things, they should be able to walk you through. What does a healthy culture look like? How do I define it? How do I model it in the classroom? How are we practicing it in the classroom as adult and students, right? How are we measuring it? How are we celebrating it? They should be able to explain all those pieces. If you can't explain them, then that's a big issue, right? So you got to start with you, make sure that it's very, very clear, right? But that's another piece of looking at who should stay and who should go. Question number 4, new hire. How would your supervisor rate you, right? How would your last 3 supervisors rate you on your leadership ability, on your self-leadership ability, on a scale of 1 to 10 when we talk to them? What would they say about you? What were some words they would use to describe themselves? You could ask the same question if someone works there. Would you follow you? How would you rate your leadership ability? And if you get someone who's really, really humble and they start kind of say, well, I could do that. Honesty is important. Awareness is more important. And it'd be important for you to affirm, important for you to see what you see in them, especially if they're one of their higher performers, right? So these are not just hiring questions, they're alignment questions. They're alignment questions. So how do you actually end up making a decision around who to keep? All right, let's use the CLEAR model. We're going to use the CLEAR model. So I'm going to share the acronym first and I'll talk about each piece. So CLEAR model is clarify, look, engage, assess, resolve. Okay. Clarify, look, engage, assess, and resolve. So let's look at C, clarify. Have I been clear? Have I been clear on expectations for the role, expectations for behavior, expectations for correction of behavior or realignment of, behavior? How would you rate yourself on, doing that? And you could always say, well, I could be better. Well, that's true. But if you've been clear, you've been clear, right? And this is why I love our BRUOL process. And hopefully some of you are using that, or you've been through our leading, leading and communicating with, difficult people training. You could use the BRUOL for everything, right? Remember, it's vision. This is what we expect. Reality. This is what's happening. You help me understand, right? Or options and opportunities. How could we do this differently next time? And L is leadership. You're asking them. How could I lead you differently so we're not in this, situation again? How could I communicate to you differently? So if you're constantly using those models, right, you can go back to that person. So, have I been clear? Help me understand why I still hear that you're doing this, or I see that you're doing this, or I've heard that you've done this, or that you're missing deadlines, or that you're late, right? We just went through this with one of our, members of our, collective. They were what's kind of maybe shared this lesson was that they were talking about they weren't sure. And the employee was like late all the time. They weren't always prepared, but they had been there a long time. There's going to be a big impact if they let them go. The organization, every part of your organization has a lid. Every classroom has a lid, a leadership lid. So the school, the class, the hallway, the team, the organization will never grow higher than the lid, right? The leadership ability of the person leading it. So your classroom, if you've got a classroom and you've got a teacher with a leadership ability that's a 4 out of 10, that class will never get above a 3. They're always going to be hitting their head on that 4 teacher or that 4 leader or that, 4, finance director, HR director, front office person, whatever it is. So have I been clear with expectations, behavior, values? Okay. Let's look at L. What are the patterns? Look, what are the patterns? L stands for look. What are the patterns? What do I see? What do I hear? What do I feel? What keeps happening? Is this like a cycling event? Do they get better for 30 days and then it goes away? Am I hearing the same things from, different people? Right? Well, what are the patterns that you're hearing and you're seeing? And it's important for you to be looking. The error I made is I stopped looking. I started waiting for people to bring things to me. And since nobody was bringing it to me, I assumed everything was okay. Remember, silence is an agreement. Silence is an agreement. Are you looking based upon what you clarified? How are you trust but verifying the behavior and the results of the people that you're not sure should be there anymore? Well, for all of your people, to be honest, but definitely the people that you're not sure who should be there. E, engage. Have I had the conversation? Have I had the conversation? And I will say that this is the one that probably creates the most delay in this decision, the conversation. Even if you've had the conversation, it probably was a passive one. It might have been as clear as it needed to be. You may have not put the exact implications, expectations, and consequences for not changing. And you can second guess yourself all you want, but you can never second guess your intuition. If you've had success in making these decisions in the past, your gut will always tell you. Your gut is going to tell you. And remember what I said. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Believe them. It's hard for people to change. They don't want to change. They don't know how to change. If they knew how to change, if they knew what they did bothered other people, they stop doing it. So you have to have the conversation. You have to have the conversation. And the faster you have it, the better, right? Shovel the pile when it's small. Shovel the pile when it's small. So C, have I been clear? L, am I looking? What are the patterns? E, engage. Have I had the conversation? A, assess. Are they aligned? Well, this is pretty black and white. Are they or not? Are they aligned to results that you're looking for? Are they aligned vision, values? Do they understand the job ahead of them? Are they representing the mission, vision, goals, and strategy in every meeting? Or are they Monday morning quarterbacking everything? Are they talking bad about you in other hallways? Are they talking bad about other teachers and other employees? I had a human resource, director once that was talking bad about other employees to other employees. I was like, you're the HR director. You can't do that. You're the you're supposed to be the model of what professionalism looks like and feels like. I didn't let that person go. I should have immediately. They weren't aligned. They weren't aligned. That's my fault, not theirs. So assess, are they aligned? Now, be very conscious of if you're creating this vision of alignment that is like you. Okay. They're not all going to be you. And God forbid, the organization should not be like me, but they should be lined up, right? Vision, values, right? Mission, vision, values, goals, strategy. But they're not going to work as hard as you. They're not going to put in all the effort that you are. Okay. So don't judge them on that. Judge them on what your team is committed to. What's alignment? What's alignment, right? Why do we exist? Mission. How do we behave? That's values, behavior. What do we do, right? What's the results, we're going to get? How will we succeed? That's the strategies. What's most important right now? That's the priorities. Who's responsible for what? Okay. My job, your job, stay in your lane. Alignment, alignment, alignment. Okay. So you got to assess. And then R is resolve. What decision needs to be made, right? Is it termination? Is it promotion? Is it changing jobs? What is it? What's the decision that needs to be made? And delay is also a decision. It's just not a productive one. It reminds me of you know, four frogs are on a log. One decides to jump off. How many frogs are still on the log? Four. Because a decision is not action. Okay. You got to take action, right? What's the action, right, from this resolution that you're going to make? And again, not everybody needs the same leadership. Not everybody needs the same leadership. You invest in your top performers. You, as the organization's leader, if that's what you're representing on this call, you're the head of the organization. You should be spending 80% of your time with the top 20% of your people. Doesn't matter the position they're in, that it's the people who have the greatest capacity to grow. That's where you should be spending your time. So you invest in them. You invest your time, you invest your professional development funds, you invest in them, right? 80-20, 80-20 principle. The problem is most of us spend 80% of our time with the bottom performers, and that's where we go wrong, trying to trying to get them to line up. Nope, they just need to go. You need to decide on them, okay? So invest in your top performers. You're going to develop the middle group, okay? Develop the middle group and decide on who's misaligned. Okay, who's misaligned? Is it misaligned because of their job? Is it misaligned because of, like what is misaligned? And can you control that? And here's the thing. You can't change people. Stop trying. You can't do it. It's impossible. Only they can change themselves. And if they're not lined up, they are not going to change. They are not going to change. So it could be time to let them know thank you for your time, right? Prepare ahead and let them go. Okay? Let them go. Your mistake in leadership is that you're probably treating everybody the same. You're probably treating everybody the same. And it reminds me of how, if you're a baseball fan, Barry Bonds, right? Barry Bonds used to get he used to get some high level treatment. Not everybody loved it, right? But he was by far the greatest baseball player at the time. He did end up, taking steroids and cheating all this stuff, but he was still amazingly great. And he had like his own kind of cushy chair and his own kind of section of the locker room. You don't lead everybody the same way in your organization. You do have a bottom line of how you lead, but not everybody is treated the same. Don't make that error. Don't make that error. Don't treat your B level people the same way that your A level because everybody's watching. Everybody's watching. And if this is resonating with you, if this is resonating with you, and we're having our upcoming leadership summit. It's May 19th. It's a full day. It's a full day, and I know a full day, Tom. I can't. We got testing that day. It's a full day of experts training you on the exact pain points that every leader is struggling with across the country right now. And one of them is hiring. One of them's hiring. So I'm going to drop the link here in the chat. If you haven't signed up yet, uh, I'll come back to you, Derek. If you haven't signed up yet, the link is there, but we've got an expert on hiring and onboarding, Sean Straub. It's not just hiring people, but hiring the right people. So we're hiring slow, orient long, to do that. So it's going to be great. And we're also bringing in someone focused on emotional intelligence. Regina Bryan is going to walk you through why this is such an important understanding. Um, every leader, every staff member needs to understand their social and emotional intelligence. And you can hire the right people and you can lose them if you don't lead well, right? We really hammered that last week. So I want to make sure that I get back through. But if you haven't signed up, you can go to our website, lblleaders.com. And right there at the top, there is a login, or you can go to charterschoolsummit.com is another way to go. But going back to that clear model, I want to make sure I get it. So it's clarify, look, engage, assess, and resolve, Derek. Resolve. What decision needs to be made, right? Is it a promotional decision, right? Is it an investment decision? Is it a develop and equip, because they're maybe in the middle, or is it they're in the wrong job or they don't need to be here? Okay, resolve. Resolve. So make sure you sign up for the summit. Everybody, it's free. It's a completely free day. Bring your team. There's seven different trainers, seven different topics. It's future-proofing your school. Future-proofing your school. This is the one. This is one of those rooms that's going to matter. I could just imagine for the day, you could set up all the trainings on one screen, build it in your conference room if it's available, or maybe the principal's area, right? Just have it playing all day. Folks who come in when a session lines up to their actual topic, because we're talking about talent, AI, branding, emotional intelligence, development of people, finances, financial strategy, board leadership, okay, future-proofing your school. So make sure you sign up. And then you get access, to the replay. So if you can't make every session, it's okay, but you can make a couple that day for sure, for sure. So let's finish up strong, and then I'm going to do some Q&A here. So think about that one person, right? Not just your whole team, one person at a time. You can have your whole rostered list, and there's lots of tools. I just gave you, just a bunch of questions to think through. Would I hire them today, knowing what I know now? If I had an opening, knowing everything that I know about this person, how they performed in the past. Let's say you're their supervisor who's giving a reference for the next job. Would you recommend them? Would you hire them? So one person at a time, and start to put your whole team in those three pockets. Invest, develop, decide, right? Invest, develop, decide. Remember, 20%, the top 20% is where you need to spend 80% of your time. If you're the best equipper, if you're the best, developer in an area, that's where you should be focusing your time, growing them, encouraging them to grow, identifying where they see themselves in 3 to 5 years, and feed them, feed them, feed them, because odds are they are those humble, hungry, and smart, ideal team players that Pat Lencioni was talking about. And I want you to really think, if you can write this down, right? Or just think on this. The culture you desire next year is being shaped by the conversations and the decisions you are avoiding right now. The culture you want next year is being shaped and decided by the conversations and decisions you're having or avoiding right now. And your best people, they're not asking if you care. They're watching what you allow. And that's the error that I've made multiple times. And I'm going to work diligently not to make it again because it impacts not only the results of your organization, it impacts the working conditions of everybody in it, and it impacts the organization after you leave, whether you planned on leaving or not, right? It's your job to lead at the highest level while you're there, right? Keep building, keep leading, and be working towards building what's next, right? Building what's next, building what's next. So that's my lesson for this week. Hope it added value to you. Hope you got a couple of good thoughts and ideas out of it. We got some folks here who are with us live, and I've got some Q&A that was sent in to us from our audience. If you ever want to send a question in to be talked about or discussed, you can just email me at tom@lbleaders.com or check out the show notes in the replay. Yeah, good, Derek. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate you coming. So anybody have a particular question who's live here? Got a couple people or something that resonated with them? No? All right, I'm going to dive into the questions here, but feel free to either raise your hand or pop something in the chat. But so the first question we got, I should start putting the people's names here. I never tagged their names, so I'm so sorry, but I will moving forward. Okay, they said the question is, I know there are many people on my team who aren't aligned, but I'm hesitant to make a move. How do I know when it's time to act? Yeah, so we walked through that clear framework model. So hopefully you got a chance uh, to listen. I'll kind of review it real quick here, but clarify. Have you been clear? Look, what are the patterns that you're seeing, hearing, and feeling? Well, it might not just be you, because that skillful politician, they're not going to act that way in front of you. They're going to look the part, act the part, talk the part, and as soon as you leave the room, they are going to dismantle. They are going to dismantle. Okay. So clarify, look, engage. Have you had the conversation? Have you been direct? Have you been very specific? Okay. Don't assess whether you've given them enough time. Have you had the conversation? And then assess, are they lined up or not? Are they lined up or not? There's a great or not Pat, Alan Malawi. He was the leader who turned around Boeing and Ford. And he has what he calls a joyful accountability conversation. Joyful accountability. I'm about 98% sure that's what he calls it. But we've talked about it in many sessions. He was one of our Live to Lead speakers too. It was awesome. But he would say, right, kind of, um, you he would specifically describe the behavior to the person. He would say, it's okay if you do it. No worries. You just can't do it here. And he would tell the person, you've got 24 hours to decide. Are you going to be lined up to what our mission is, our values are, our strategy is? Or are you going to continue to do what you're doing? Because if you can't do it, it's okay. No worries. I will help you move along to your next role. You just can't do it here. And I believe when he was at Ford and he turned it around, I don't think he fired anybody. I think that's what I read. And I don't know if I must have given his book away. If it doesn't fit on my shelf anymore, I have to give it away. There's going to be a lot of books, coming soon, everybody. So be on the lookout. I got to purge again. But that joyful accountability conversation, so incredible. But he's clear. He's really clear on the culture he desired to create, the goal that they were looking to, achieve, how they were going to do it. And he talked about it all the time, right? So clear is kind, right? Being unclear is to be unkind. Clear, look, engage, assess, resolve. Okay, what decision has to be made? And so, make sure you've done those those parts. Emphasize, the patterns, not the moments, right? What are the patterns of this individual, right? What are the tangible evidences that they're moving to a better result for you? And is it moving as fast as you need it? Man, I'll never forget. I hired, or we had a teacher, and she was young, and and she was good, and she quit. She quit like I don't know, maybe almost the start of the fourth quarter, maybe a little bit before it. And she didn't have a job. She just quit. She just had enough, right? And so about like 20 days into her 30-day kind of notice, we sat down and I talked about it. So, well, I really don't want you to leave. Let's do these things. We changed her mentor, we made some adjustments, and she finished off the year strong. That summer, that summer, man, we had an amazing candidate who could have filled that job. And I didn't hire them because I was loyal to the person who shifted from what I thought. And wouldn't you know that they quit again at the start of because we were year-round school, at the first 9-week break, they quit again. And of course, that other person found a great job because they're an incredible candidate. I totally screwed up there. I should have at that point thanked that person for finishing the year, realized that they weren't aligned, and moved on. And the only reason that they stayed is because they didn't have a job. So if you're clear, supported, and addressed it, it's no longer a people problem. It's a leadership decision. So you've got to make a decision whether or not they're lined up. What does your gut tell you, right? If you make these decisions long enough, and sadly, I've had to let go some folks. I should have let go a lot more, and I could probably count on less than one hand the times where the person's actually really changed their behavior to where I needed. So, if your gut's telling you that it's time for them to go, it's time for them to go. Just make sure you call your lawyer, make sure you follow the handbook and the policy, and you just do it the right way, right? You do it with compassion, sympathy, right? But you follow your policy, and you just move forward in a very professional way, a very professional way. Okay, hopefully that's helpful for that first person. All right, here we go. He's got some questions. How do you get past the fear of removing staff you know need to be removed, but you don't have a clear candidate? Okay, so that's a systems issue. And I remember when I took over this last school, um, that's exactly what they talked about, that there wasn't really good candidates. I was like, yeah, I said, you guys have to be kidding me. This is like a top school in the area. And it's really that we just didn't have a 12-month marketing and recruitment, system. So that's the first thing I would tell everybody on this call. I don't care if you have zero jobs available, you're always, always, always recruiting for talent. Always recruiting for talent. And you can just say, like, you just put something on your HR page, like, you know, if this school is a good fit for you, apply. We're always, right? We're always looking for top talent. Okay. So if you don't have a clear candidate to replace them and you're like in the year, right? That's where the strategy is going to be important. And I don't remember kind of where I read it or where I heard it, but I remembered learning about how hospitals and how nursing teams, like they are so adamant on alignment and the work that they do, like they'll just cover each other. Like until we find the right person. Okay. So I think this is where it's important that your team is on board with let's find a way to cover this role until we can replace them the right way, right? So you kind of maybe think of two or three, plans to help, get there. So it could be like maybe you have to maybe you have to get someone else covered who's good at math to teach the math class, right? Maybe you have to find, uh, you know, maybe like a super duper part-time person, that, might be able to come in and, fill the gap for the 45 days or 60 days, maybe, right? But I do think that it's important to be constantly recruiting and constantly have a plan B. Or you just have to be like thumb on that person for the rest of the year and just let them know that you're not coming back. Um, and how to get past the fear of removing staff, Oh, okay. So it's the same question twice. It's in here. Yeah, I think that's really the key. And that happened to me. And that's why this person was in, that's why we had four individuals in that role. The first person who was a veteran left at the end of the 9 weeks at the during our like first track out. And then I got talked into hiring internally, and I hired a kindergarten assistant who wanted to be a middle school science teacher. That lasted less than a week. They were really bad and they put their hands on kids. So don't get talked into hiring someone who doesn't fit. And then I had a sub and she did fine. And then I came in and started to teach, but I got 700 on my SATs. I should have not been the right. I should have had a better plan. And then the fourth one was the one that we finally hired, who was really, really like, oh my gosh, like just she was she was on it, but she was on it to the point where she was really bad for the school. So sadly, like kids lost a whole year. So I do think that if you're going into the school year with any concerns about people, like I would already start to have like a plan B in play, or I just wouldn't even, bring them on anymore. And that's what happened with that other job that I said, like the person left at the 9 week break. I think we did end up hiring a pretty good person in that role, luckily. Um, but there's two things that I probably shouldn't always do in an organization. Well, there's one thing I should do, and there's one thing I shouldn't do. I can see the good in the talent in anybody who applies for any job. I could almost see them in the role. But I'm also really good at attracting and recruiting talent. And I've have a track record for that because that just happened at the school I was at. So I think though, you've got to get to a point where you're always recruiting, you're always having jobs sort of available. And you just tell your current team, like, look, in our world, there is a rumor that there is a lack of teachers or a lack of good employees. So I'm always just going to keep this open. This is nothing against you. This is just something may happen to you, right? And you may have to leave or you may move. Or, I mean, especially if you're like in an area where maybe their husband or their spouse is in the military, they may have to shift or their job shifts. So, it's hard to replace any employee midway through the year. So the other part I would say, if you've got teacher assistants as well, maybe the best recruiting process we ever had is that we would pay for our teacher assistants to get the same level of training as our teachers. So when our teacher was out sick, like the teacher assistant moved in, but there was no change. Like there was almost no change to the daily education plan because they had been equipped with the same skills and training. And then they were our next person off the bench, right? So build your bench, have a good recruitment process. Those are things I would be. And if you've got those in play, then you don't necessarily have to worry about if someone shifts out. So that's my best answer. I don't know if you have a follow-up, but
That was perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for.
yeah,
That's what kind of what we run into sometimes. And
sure.
you're like, okay, I'm looking for someone, and you kind of hang on to people at times because you hadn't got this one in the bag, and then now you find yourself
Yeah,
into going to another school year with the person you were trying
yeah.
to get
Yeah,
rid of,
because they
lack of a
finished
better
off
phrase.
okay, right? Yeah, I mean, it's
Mhm.
exactly what I just described.
Mhm.
Man, I've heard so many times, like when a principal tells me that they get good scores, I almost want to hug them and say,
Mhm.
well, I can tell inside that that they're causing problems. You just don't know how to address it,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Because, like, let's be very honest. Um, the average tenure of a principal is like 3 years.
Mhm.
And all those teachers been there 10, 15, 20. So all depending where you are in the country too, could
Yeah.
be that, you've got you're in like a unionized and it's really hard to get anybody out or it's hard to move them
Mhm.
or I've had the bulk of my leadership, well, actually all of my leadership in like a job, a role has been through like, a charter school. So,
Mhm.
even though you're on an at-will contract doesn't mean you could just fire everybody at will,
Yeah.
but it does mean that that there's a
Mhm.
lot more, opportunity. But man, if you have a good hiring system and a good orientation and, development system, then you shouldn't, right, have to do this, too often. And
Yes,
then,
that's right. Mhm.
and I didn't really talk about this during the call, but man, I am blown away by how many electronic reference surveys I get.
Mhm.
And in my opinion, it's lazy.
Mhm.
It's like I want to call and talk to the person that led them last. And
Mhm.
every bad hire I've had, I either did one of two things. I skipped
Mhm.
one of the steps of our, behavior-based hiring process because I needed time or, whatever. Or I didn't grab a specific comment that the reference told me. And
Mhm.
I'll never forget one, I hired them and it was actually out of that role that I just, kind of shared that like the teacher quit at the end of the year, but then they stayed and then I hired a person, right? So the person we hired after them had experience as a principal, but we were hiring them as like a language arts teacher. And the supervising reference told me, he said, look, as long as you don't put them in a position of like having to lead people, they're going to be awesome. And I go, oh
Mhm.
no, we're just hiring them as a teacher, right?
Mhm.
You know who I never told that? The next guy.
Mhm.
That person got promoted to the principal job eventually and
Mhm.
had a really bad episode and it
Mhm.
didn't work out. And when I heard about it, I said, oh, sugar.
Mhm.
I could have told that other person, like, hey,
Mhm.
so that's a good way on your succession plan. Like, kind of
Yeah.
you can say, hey, here's some things I know about people, or here's, someone I've been working on. And the next leader might not want to hear it because they may want to make their own calls or, decisions.
Yeah.
But the staff doesn't turn over too much. I mean, and especially a staff that's like a veteran staff at a strong school, and they got an unbelievable stranglehold on the culture of the organization. It's really hard to shift a culture of a school that you inherit.
Yeah.
Really hard, really hard.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Awesome. Well, great. Really,
But
really good
mhm.
question. Let's see. I think I got one more here. Let me pull. There's a bunch. Let me pick one that we haven't really talked about. Ooh, how do I have a conversation without damaging the relationship or the culture? And I think, the first part is if you've been through our dealing with, difficult people, remember there's the BRUOL, but then there's also the feelings behavior impact, FBI, right? So feelings behavior impact. And here's what I've learned. Most of the people that are difficult or cause a problem, they really don't honestly know that they cause this much of a problem. Okay. And I know that's hard to believe, but for the most part, if you're very, very clear with them, right? Your clarity is kindness. Uh, like they don't want to be known like that in an organization, right? So, feelings is here's how you make me feel, or here's how you make other people feel when you do this and you specifically name the behavior, be very exact. Don't say words like anytime or all the time or every time or everybody. Like just be very, very specific and then direct on the impact. If you continue to do it, right, or because you're doing it, this is what's happening or this is what's going to happen. So you gotta be direct, use evidence, focus on the behavior, not the person, right? You gotta separate the being from the behavior. Okay, value everybody. Just be very, very direct and define the next steps. And this gets back to that like alignment piece. And you want to just know that avoiding the conversation doesn't protect the relationship, it actually damages it. And I didn't, realize that, it's like by you not telling the person whether their instructions poor or their impact is poor. Like if you're not telling them directly, you're just doing them a major disservice. And your job as a leader is not to kind of have a bless your heart attitude. It's to say, hey, first of all, are you okay? Right? You want to check in on the person, make sure they're right, and say, well, these are some of the results I expected, or these are the things that are late, or this is the impact when you're not doing it. So yeah, so I think that's another easy big one. So if you don't have access to our dealing with, difficult people training, reach out. Just email me, the word difficult, and I'll point you in the right direction. I think we've had over 1,000 people go through it. It's a really great, simple tool, and you have lifetime, so you can just keep on practicing. And we always joke that by the time the end of the training, you'll be looking for difficult people to direct. So, so I'm going to end with this one last one. What if I make the wrong decision? So remember, part of your job as a leader is being reflective, right? So every day, what went well today? What went wrong today? What was my role in either? And what will I do differently tomorrow? What will I do differently tomorrow? So it's the same thing with every breakdown, right? Systematic breakdown. You have an after action review of everything. What went wrong? When did it go wrong? When did I miss it? Right? You're just looking for the evidence of it. And I just told you that when I have had a bad hire, I'll go back and I'll be like, oh, how did we miss that? And I remember, right, it was the reference call someone was trying to tell me, or oh my gosh, we didn't put him through the behavior process where we had to ask him to do this. Like so have a framework of success, trust your framework, tweak it to make it better every time based upon something you missed the last time, and know and trust your gut, right? You've been in these situations before. And, like if you make a bad decision, that's when you really reflect on it and you say, okay, this step has to be part of my decision-making process. And so if you're on our team, like this, part of the 18 steps is a social media and deep, like, Google search. That's there for a reason. It's because we almost hired a leader that had an unbelievable, just like a story about them that was easily, Googleable. I think that's the word. But now, right, it's like one of the first things we do if someone applies for a job that we're like, like the head of the hiring team, like we are looking for those keys right away. So every time that if you think you made a bad decision, go back and reflect, do an after action review on your decision making process and see where either you didn't follow your framework or where you could improve your framework and then do it. Embed that into your decision making process and make sure, most importantly, make sure that you're equipping and building your team along the way. So tell them, right? This is why we do this now, right? Or this is the error that I made. I remember I was coaching a principal and she was very upset because her team wasn't coming along as fast as she wanted. And I'm like, well, how much time are you, sharing them like your what you failed and what you learned? She goes, oh, I want them to learn on their own. I go, if you're waiting for them to learn on their own, it's going to take an eternity. Like it's your job as a leader to point out where you screwed up and accelerate their leadership through what you did wrong, right? It's important that they fail forward, but it's more important that you are um, helping them understand like the blind spots that are out there and the leadership landmines that you stepped on. And this is why we follow a particular framework to get these answers because we want predictable, right? Consistent, proven results. And that's what having your own blueprint for success is, where you can have access to our blueprint, for success. If you don't, it's all these, systems and frameworks for every aspect of your school based upon, my, 20 years and our team's experience in really getting good decisions made. So strong leaders don't wait for certainty, right? They act with clarity. So feel free to message us any question any week, and we will include it on this. Thanks for those who came in to our session live today. It was good to talk to you and see you. And feel free. We're here every Monday, same link, same time. So 10 o'clock Eastern on Monday, and then our replays are shown on the Principal's Office podcast if you want to listen or on our YouTube page if you like to watch. So thanks everybody. Have a great intentional week and make sure you're taking the time. Now look, if you're listening to this day, this is Monday, May 4th. It's the first day of Teacher Appreciation Week. be sure you go back to last week's lesson because we specifically talked about if you don't have a really good teacher appreciation week, you're not sure. Like, here's two easy, quick things you could do. One, send a note to all the families and just have them send in a handwritten note to any of the teachers at the school. Like, that's a great one because number one, words of affirmation is the number one language of appreciation. And number two is quality time. So how could you find a way to give your teachers and employees back some time this week, or just spend time with them? So I just showed you how you could actually spend time walking them through those behavior-based questions, or make sure you've identified your top 20 and like get time with them and ask them, where do they see themselves in 3 years? If they were in charge with something, differently they, would do, what's a training that they would like to have next year? What's a role that they could see themselves, or maybe what's a role that you see them in, based upon, some of their answers. So that's your challenge for this week is to identify your invest group, develop group, and decide group, and get every parent to send in a handwritten note to your teachers, and they're going to love it. All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great week.